afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is McHaffie. I was born and raised in the Hamilton area, and I work as an ecologist and land stewardship coordinator for the Bruce Trail Conservancy.
And what does an ecologist do exactly?
So an ecologist is focused on the interactions between different living things and between living things and their environment. So some ecologists focus more on research, so think university professors who might be studying really specific interactions between plants and animals, or they may be looking at a broad landscape scale. How do ecosystems form, different things like that. And then some ecologists like myself are more on the applied side of things, so we try to take what we know about ecology and use that to solve problems. So for example, I might be looking at how can we balance the needs of people with the needs of other living things in nature? How can we make sure that hikers on the Bruce Trail are able to have a good experience, but ensure that they're not having a negative impact on the species around them?
And what's the ecology along the Bruce Trail that goes through Hamilton like, and just Hamilton as a whole?
Well, Hamilton's really interesting because we have all these sort of geography and climate factors coming together to create a really diverse area with a lot of different ecosystems. So first of all, Hamilton is in the Carolinian forest zone, which is this small portion of southern Ontario that has a forest type that's really similar to forests that you find in the eastern United States all the way down to the Carolinas. So we have a lot of different species here that are typically found further south, and they're at their northern sort of range limit here in southern Ontario, and they're not found anywhere else in Canada. And even though the Carolinian zone covers only like 1% of Canada's total land area, it's actually one of the most, or the most species diverse zone in Canada. So that's really neat. And then you have Hamilton being situated on the west end of Lake Ontario, which is a really important area for a lot of waterfowl and migrating birds that stop over here in Coutts Paradise on their way north or south during migration. And so you've got all that species diversity coming from that area. And then, of course, we have the Niagara Escarpment, which the Bruce Trail follows in Hamilton. And the escarpment, because of its sort of difficult terrain, has remained fairly undeveloped in many areas. And so it really serves as a corridor for a lot of different species that are moving from natural area to natural area. And so the Bruce Trail in Hamilton goes through a lot of deciduous forest. It goes through grassland and meadow habitats. It goes by wetland. And so we're really lucky here in Hamilton to have all these different ecosystems that we can enjoy and that provide habitat to different species.
And I know you have a particular interest in grasslands, like tall grass prairies. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about grasslands and why are they important?
Sure. So a grassland is basically an area that's dominated by grasses rather than trees. Some grasslands may have a few scattered trees here and there, but it's more or less an open area. And there's many different types of grasslands, tall grass prairie being one of them. And one of the reasons they're so important is because they're a really important habitat for a lot of rare plant and animal species. So, for example, in Ontario, originally tall grass prairie covered about 1,000 square kilometers of Ontario. But when settlers came in, they saw those open areas as places that maybe they could just turn into farmland or build on. And so we've lost a lot of our tall grass prairie. We actually only have about 3% left in Ontario compared to what we had originally. And tall grass prairies are host to an amazing diversity of grasses and wildflowers, and also the animals that depend on them. So things like snakes, grassland nesting birds. So we have a number of species at risk like bobolinks and meadowlarks, which nest in grasslands, and so they need those habitats to complete their life cycle. They're also really important for carbon sequestration and storage, so for fighting climate change. So these grasses that you see around me, these big tall grasses, they actually have really deep and extensive root systems. And so they take in carbon and they're storing them in the soil. And so they're actually helping to pull carbon out of the atmosphere and help us fight climate change. They're also really great in that they're quite resistant to drought. So I mentioned those extensive root systems. It means that these plants can take up water even in very dry conditions. So when we think about potentially having more extreme weather in the future, like extreme drought, we're hoping that these grasses and these systems can be resilient to that extreme weather as well. One of the things that I studied when I did my master's research was grasslands that had been restored along roadsides, and there were some additional benefits there. They actually helped to reduce snowdrift onto roads, and they also helped to absorb water runoff during extreme storms to sort of prevent flooding. So really great benefits for people and also for plants and animals.
And grasslands have a really unique feature to them that we sometimes do burning to them. Can you tell us a little bit about burning?
Yeah, so grasslands actually are maintained by disturbance. And so usually that's either grazing, maybe historically by large mammals, or through burning. And so burning is a way to basically remove any trees or things that may be moving into the grassland, and also to help sort of provide open bare ground so that the seeds of all these grasses and wildflowers can germinate and sort of replenish themselves. So the Bruce Trail Conservancy is working on some grassland restoration projects, and we did our first controlled burn this spring. And so it's very safe, it's very controlled. There's a specialist team, and they essentially set this fire, and it helps to remove all that buildup of dead plants and things to sort of create some bare ground and regenerate the grassland.
Wow, thank you for telling us so much about grasslands. It's amazing how much diversity lies in these areas that so many of us might think as bare, but secretly are hiding a huge plethora of species. I was wondering if you had any final words to share with us.
I think what I'd like to end off with is that one of the important interactions that I think about a lot as an ecologist is the interaction between people and the other living things around us. And that's a relationship that we have to constantly be fostering and working on. So I encourage everyone to think about their relationship with the species around them and make sure that you're fostering that in a positive way.